Hi folks, I'm Steve Butler. Shaker furniture has never been as popular as it is today. Simple lines, uncluttered surfaces, and quality craftsmanship give it mass appeal. This beautiful bench was found in dining rooms and meeting halls throughout Shaker communities. With just a few boards, we're going to create this Shaker classic. Come see how we do it in the garage. All right, let's have a look at our project. This larger dining bench grew out of the Shaker's demands for formal seating. This bench is the Shaker's rendition of the classic 5-board bench with a few exceptions. They've added some double OG brackets, which we're going to use on our project. So we have our large seating area comprised of a couple of boards that we've laminated together. We have 3 sides which hold the bench upright, and what ties it all together are these double OG brackets, which are half-lapped into the sides. We then add a crest rail, and this is all at a 9-degree angle, and this is sturdy. All right, let's get started. Let me show you what I did. Instead of making a lot of drawings and a lot of construction notes, I made full-size templates. I used 3/8 plywood. It's sturdy. I want this to last for a while. And these are the full size. This is the size of the board I'm going to be cutting and making. I wrote all my directions down on here, my measurements, spray lacquered them so it doesn't wear off, drilled a hole, put some string in there, I can hang them up on the wall, and when I want to do this project again, I have it. The other nice thing is, once we cut our boards, I simply can lay this right on top of it and see if it fits properly. Now, this is the board I'm going to use for the sides. We have our back, which cut at 9 degrees, which gets glued on later on. And I've also made the double OG template. And I've cut my joints right in here. We're doing some half laps, some notches. Cut them out on the OG, put them in there. Everything we need to know is laid out on these boards. All right, let's go cut our boards for the sides. Now I'm working in a small shop space. I have a lot of equipment on wheels, and sometimes when I'm just cutting a couple of boards or I need just to join a couple of boards, I don't want to haul out the joiner and move equipment around. So let me show you what I did. Made a simple jig, and this is what I used for this project. We're using 3/4 inch dimensioned pine. So I have a piece of plywood, just a scrap piece of plywood out of the scrap bin. Made sure, I ripped it down and made sure I had 2 parallel edges. Took another piece of scrap wood and measured my boards. In this case, we were using 1x8 pine boards. So I measured it over so there was just enough for the edge to hang over the plywood edge. Attached 2 toggle clamps. And let me show you. It doesn't matter if one edge is flush against your scrap piece. We're going to put it up here. Make sure that's the edge I want. Now with pine, you can get away with using the sawn edge as a glue up. Now you can see this just hangs over a little bit. It's up against, flush up against my scrap board, and I've measured my fence to the saw blade. It's just the distance of our jig, and I'm just going to make a pass and cut that off, and we've essentially used the table saw as a joiner. All right. Look at that nice clean edge. Again, if this was hardwood, you would have to run it over the joiner, but because it's pine, it's softwood, we can get away with using that sawn edge as a glue-up edge. I've marked which edge we want. Just going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other board that we're going to glue up. Most people know Shakers from their furniture. That's the legacy of Shakers. But again, there's much more to them. Everything was about glorifying God. There was spirituality in everything they did, from the washings, peeling a potato, everything. So that's why craftsmanship was so important. Cleanliness is next to godliness. You'll notice Shaker pegs all around the perimeter of a room. They would hang the chairs so they could clean. Everything was very simplistic, but utilitarian, extremely functional, and very well made. Okay, we've cut the boards to make up our panels. Now we just have to go ahead and glue them up. Simple little setup. I have 2 clamps I sit them on, and you want to alternate your clamps. Bottom, top, bottom, and go along. If these were longer boards, we do the same thing for the full length. If you don't do it, and you just put them on one side, the side that's unsupported, when it comes time to clamping them up, you're going to make it buckled. You're going to end up with warped boards and have to do this thing all over again. Simply just going to turn one board over, a little bead of glue on one edge. You can use your finger, a card, or a roller and spread this all along the edge. I don't. I simply put one on the outside edge. I just put the bead of glue a little closer, lay it down, and now it starts to roll down the edge. Butt the other one up, and I just slide them along just to create a little friction, a little butt joint there. All right. I'm going to start with my top board, and I just have a little couple of scrap pieces that I use to elevate the clamp. It's a metal clamp, and sometimes when you get glue squeeze out, it reacts with the metal and it can stain your wood. Not a huge deal, you just have to spend more time cleaning it up. Now what I'm going to do is I lift one end of the board to get that centered nice and flush. And now just go down. Push this down, make sure it's flush. There we go. Little squeeze out. We don't want copious amounts of glue coming out here. You're just going to have to clean it up. But you also don't want to starve the joint. So you want a nice bead of glue. Turn it over. There we go. Just going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other side boards. All right. We've glued up our side panels. Now let me show you this. Here's our template. Again, I can lay this right on here, and I don't even have to take a measurement if I don't need to. I can draw a pencil line. All my information's on our template. Right now we're going to cut them to size, and then we're going to go ahead and cut the joints on them. Set the table saw to 11 3/4 inches, which is the width we need. Now, if you're not sure how high to raise the blade, you want to be safe, but you also want to make sure you don't kick back and bury the blade. Simple thickness of a pencil, 1/4 inch, you can't go wrong. Make sure the fence is locked down. All right, so I've cut our boards to width. Now we're just going to cut them to length. I've put on my table saw sled, and I'm just going to trim an edge off first, just to get a good, clean, square edge. And then I'll measure and cut them to length. We'll go ahead, do that to all of them, turn them around, take a measure, cut them to 17 1/8 inch long. All right, I'm just going to put my line that I've drawn at the 17 1/8 inch mark, and I'm just going to keep it, reference it right up to our saw blade line there, and I'm going to draw a quick line here. All right, that looks great. We're just going to go ahead and do the same thing to the 2 other side panels. I've made a lot of Shaker furniture. I really enjoy the clean lines of Shaker furniture as well as the quality craftsmanship. So I've made a few tables. This is the first bench I've made. But again, they're great learning projects if you're a beginner. And they're also just great projects for the seasoned woodworker because it's really, there's details in the simple joinery and craftsmanship. Everything is clean and has to be well done. Now that we have our panels cut to size, what I want to do is take our 1x4 piece of pine, and again, I can take the measurement right off our template. Cut the pieces we need to glue on to make our backrest. This is 34 1/4 inch, so what I'm going to do is cut a piece off the end, get a nice square edge, and then cut this to length. All right, we'll just go ahead and do the same thing to the two other back pieces. The bench we did has a back on it, and that was added on. It was an afterthought. It's when they needed some formal seating for the dining halls and the community meeting rooms, so they simply added on that back and the backrest. The original bench, I showed the smaller one in the beginning, but it was a larger one just like that. But when they needed more formal seating, they added the back. Okay, we've cut our side panels to width and length. We've cut our backrest to width and length. The next thing we need to do now is cut the joinery in our side panels. I've installed my stacked dado blades. I've stacked them so it's 3/4 of an inch wide. And here's our template. This will show you perfectly. We're basically using a lap joint made up of these 2-inch by 3/4 inch notches. Now we'll cut these two. This one here is for a variation of the bench I do. And we're going to cut them 1.5 inches away from the edge of the sides. I'm also going to cut a mating one in the double OG brackets, which will lock this all together. All right, let's get started. Now, I've installed a wooden fence on my miter gauge, and I've drawn a line 1.5 inches away from our notch where our dado blades start. So all I have to do is put my board up against there, make a pass, and cut the notches. I'm going to do this incrementally though. I don't want to take 2 inches off all at once. That's a lot of meat. You'll get a lot of tear out. So we're just going to raise it up 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch until we get our 2-inch mark. Now, I'm going to be standing this board up, and you can see I'm going to reference it off my line there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to clamp it to help secure this and also keep it tight against my fence here, my wooden fence, and that'll reduce any tear out. Sounds silly, but really check where the blade's going to exit. You don't want to run into this clamp. You'll sure know it. Move that up a bit. I also tilt my clamp so it sits against the miter gauge, so with the rattling of the table saw, it doesn't fall over and startle you. All right, that looks great. All right, that looks great. You can see we're just doing it incrementally. You can see how high these blades are. You wouldn't want to do that all in one pass. So now I'm just going to lower the blade, turn this around. Again, I'm going to take my square and I simply just want to draw another reference line. There we go. Butt this up on our line, our indexing line. You can clamp it, careful where you put it, make sure it's not in the path of the blade. Sounds silly, but when you're doing a lot of these, it's easier to get turned around. All right, there we go. We'll cut this one, then we'll do the same thing for the other side boards. Okay, we have all our notches cut in our 3 side panels. While I have these dado blades set up in the table saw, I'm going to cut the notches out on our double OG bracket. Now, I've ripped these boards to the exact width of our bracket, and the reason I did that is I want to keep a straight edge, a solid edge here. And I'll show you what I mean. Now, I've trimmed one of the ends, keep it nice and square, and I'm just simply referencing the bracket up against there. The rest is oversized, that'll get trimmed off in the bandsaw. I'm going to trace our bracket out. There we go. Why I've left that edge there is you want a good reference surface on the table saw bed. If this was our piece of pine and we'd cut it out on the bandsaw first, you could see what would happen. I'd have to clamp it, and it's a little precarious cutting that notch. So here we have a good surface that's stout on there. So what I'm going to do is simply take my square and on the other side just make a line so I know our depth, and I'm going to use these 2 lines from our pattern and reference them to where I cut out where the blades came through on our miter gauge. Fold that up, clamp it down again out of the path of the blades, and we're just going to make a few passes and cut our notch. Okay. There we go, look at that. That's nice. And if we were slightly off-centered, we could just trace our pattern again and make up the difference. So I'm just going to go ahead, trace the pattern on our other boards, and go ahead and cut those out. The templates really help. You can hang them on the wall, and if you're going to make this project again, you have all the information there. You don't have to go through files of notes that you made. The information's written right on there. Sprayed lacquer them again so it doesn't rub off, and it's the exact size of the pieces I need. I made some for the smaller bench I showed in the beginning, and the larger bench with the backrest. And right there, these are all the parts. So if I'm using 3/4 pine, 1-inch cherry, whatever material I'm using, I'll just cut them to this size. I can draw it right on there like a pattern. It's perfect. I don't even really have to use a tape measure and measure them now. I have that. All right, we have all our notches cut in our side panels. We have all the notches cut in our double OG brackets. You can see how this is coming together. That'll fit nice. Again, keeping it a little bit below the surface so that when we screw this onto our bench seat, it draws it in nice and tightly. So the thing we have to do now is go cut these out on the bandsaw, but we also have to trace and cut this arch. Simply just going to lay our template on our board. And if you didn't make a template, you could use a set of dividers to draw the arch, the coffee can. It's really just what looks pleasing to you. There's no hard and fast rule here. There we go. Let's go over to the bandsaw. We're at the bandsaw. We're going to cut out our pattern for our double OG bracket. We're going to cut out our arch. And then also while I'm here, I'm going to take our backboards and trace our template on it and cut the 9-degree angle that'll make up our backrest. Simply just going to take our template, trace it on, and go ahead. I have a 5/8 blade in here. I'm going to make this straight cut. All right, there we go. We'll just go ahead and we're going to sand this afterwards. First, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, cut out the rest of the brackets. The best thing about this project is you can make it any size. I really didn't have to make that bench, you know, the size it is. It's 78 inches long. We could have made it 50 inches, 48 inches. We might not have used 3 sides, we just could have used 2 sides, but that's the beauty of this project. The joinery doesn't change. You're still using the double OG or butterfly brackets, as some people call them. You just make your seat longer or narrower, but you might want to use some thicker wood, whatever you choose. But yeah, you can make it any size just according to what your needs are, if it has to fit into a certain place in your house. We have all our side panels cut. We have the arches cut in them. We have our notches or our dados cut in them. We've cut and sanded our OG brackets, sanded all our parts. Our backrests are done. Now what we need to do is glue our side panel to the backrest to create that one solid piece. Now you want to make sure you can see this is 1 3/4 inches wide and this is 2 inches. And you want to glue it onto the 1 3/4 piece. So we're simply just going to set that up. And I'm just going to throw a bead of glue on right to where that taper starts. Again, you don't need a lot. You don't want too much squeeze out. You'll be spending most of your time cleaning that up. But you also don't want to starve the joint. Just going to drop that down. And like the last glue up, just press it up there and slide it along just to give it a little friction fit. Now, again, I'm going to start in the middle. Almost forgot. I'm going to bring my pads up. This is just going to elevate the clamp a little. And like I said before, metal sometimes reacts with the moisture and the glue, can stain the wood. It will come out, but again, it's just more work. If you can avoid it, why not? There we go. Nice squeeze out. Perfect. We'll go ahead and do that to our other boards. We'll let them sit for an hour, clean them off, sand them, and attach the brackets. Our project is a bench that originated from the Hancock Shaker Village, which I think is the 3rd shaker community, and it was done in the 1700s. So it's a simple bench. It only takes a few boards to make, but again, the double OG brackets really tie it in, and this is something the Shakers developed, and it works perfectly. It's solid, just a great piece. All right, I went ahead, I took the clamps off of our sides. We've got our backs glued onto our sides. I went ahead and sanded them. Now all we have to do is glue on our brackets. Looks great, they came out great. Now, when you're sanding, you don't want to sand aggressively because you're going to make the board thinner. And by doing that, you're going to make that joint narrower and it'll be sloppy. So you just want to take it easy. And that's what we're looking for. That's a nice fit. All right, let's go ahead and glue these on. What I'm going to do, a little spring clamp, put that on, acts as a third hand, helps us out. Little glue. Now again, you don't need copious amounts. You know, you're going to have more to clean up. So this is a nice fit. And you don't want too much to squeeze out here. Now you really don't need, a lot of people would put it on both joints. You really don't need to. Like I said, this is a nice fit and it's just going to rub up against there. And again, we want it just a little below that line because when we screw it on, that's going to help really purchase, grab the seat and pull it in. There we go. We'll clean up that little squeeze out after. There we go. I'm just going to put this aside and do the same thing on the other 2 sides. These look great. Our brackets are glued into our sides. Just looks really nice. And let me show you what I did. I went ahead and I glued up the boards that make up our bench seat. And I did it the same way we did the smaller side boards. I just alternated more clamps so it wouldn't buckle. and cut this to size. And what I did, I used our stacked dado blades on the table saw. You could use a router and a 3/4 inch bit if you want. I cut some shallow dados into our boards. These are only 1/8 of an inch deep. And why I did that, and getting back to our brackets, why they're sunk down a little lower than our sides, is to accommodate this dado. They'll fit in there. That's nice. And that gives it a little more purchase. It stops that side-to-side rocking movement. Now, all I'm going to do, I'm not going to use any glue here. I'm just going to counter bore, drill some larger holes, and then screw the brackets right into the seat. All right. I've clamped our bench seat down to our sawhorses, and we're good to go. All right, that's great. Now I'm just going to flip this over and attach our backrest. All right, that looks great. As usual, I had a great time building this project with you. I hope you'll come back and see us again here in the garage.
Said, hey, hey, how are you? It's been a long, long time. I just found your number, thought I'd drop you a line. You know I've been out on this road such a long, long time. Just wanted to let you know I'm doing just fine. But hey, hey, I'm doing fine out here on the road. As long as I have friends to call, I'm never.
And now I'm just simply going to draw some counterbore holes. Draw. Yeah, we're just going to draw. That's fine. A pencil is all you need to do this project. Take 3.